use the mic. So this workshop will introduce ideas from the new book, The Well-Read Game on Playing Thoughtfully, which explores the rich aesthetic experiences games can offer. Authors Matthew Farber, and unfortunately for our Zoom you can't see her, but Tracy Fullerton is here, you'll hear from her, are here to guide you through sample readings and lead a group interpretation demonstrating how personal player response can be used in classrooms, co-play, or reading groups to deepen our understanding of games as meaningful texts. Please welcome Matthew Farber, and I promise on the screen, Tracy Fullerton.
Thank you. Tracy is right there in this tiny little thumbnail.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll introduce myself first. I'm Matthew Farber. I'm the co-director of the Gaming SEL Lab at the University of Northern Colorado. I'm also an associate professor in the School of Teacher Education, and I'm a play theorist.
This disembodied voice is Tracy Fullerton. I'm director of the Game Innovation Lab at the University of Southern California, coming to you from Tokyo. Okay, I'll jump in then.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So as we already sort of heard in the intro, Matt and I have just published a new book. It's called The Well-Read Game on Playing Thoughtfully, and the kind of core difference, I think, between this book about games and many books about games is that it's not about the game itself or the outcomes of a game or the outcomes of play, or even about the aesthetics of the formal game structure. This book is about the really ephemeral emotional experiences that we all have when we're in play. And we really rarely discuss these. These are the kind of private stories that we all tell ourselves as we play, the questions we ask, and our reactions to the game intent. And in the book, we call these experiences readings because they involve really so many of the same inherent aspects of engaging with literary or cinematic or other expressive texts. So when we are taught to read, and here's just a classic children's book as an example, when we're taught to read, if you can all remember back to those days, we're led through our basic experiences with literacy, where we learn to read words and decode words and how to just glean basic meanings from reading. We're led and kind of scaffolded through that process to a place where we begin to relate those basic meanings to our lives and to larger experiences. But that doesn't happen when we play games. Instead, there's a focus on simply learning how to play the game and what we can do with the game, and not what the game means to us. So, you know, one of the things that's really interesting is that we all understand that for books, the text on the page is just waiting for a reader to come along and give it life. And this is a quote from Louise Rosenblatt, foundational literacy scholar who basically invented the idea of what we call reader response. The idea that when a reader encounters a text, they give that text life. It's a unique life, a life that is unique to the event of that reader coming in contact with a text. So when we started writing this book and we started thinking about what does it mean to do a reading, we talked with a really interesting guy, Lawrence Musgrove, and we asked Lawrence, he had worked with his students to sort of create an image of what happens when a reader meets a text. And this is the image. We thought it was really absurdly cute and fun, but also really interesting and rich. And so, here you have this little guy, and the little guy is shaking hands with the text. And when the text and the reader meet, a response is formed. As I mentioned, that response is completely unique to that reader in that moment. What's not pictured here is in some versions of this diagram, which Musgrove worked with his students to create. Sometimes the little stick figure is actually holding a piece of luggage, so like their lived experience that they bring with them to that response. And we found that to be really interesting. We asked Lawrence to work with us on what it might look like if we drew a similar picture for what happens when we play. And so this is a little bit more complicated. In this version of the image, we have the game itself, and we have instead of a reader, we have the player. And the game and the player are shaking hands, and the player is holding that little piece of baggage, that lived experience that they bring with them. And they're both having their own response. So, games have a kind of thought process in a way. The game is thinking in its own language. It's thinking in the language of buttons and systems. And the player is also thinking a little bit in that language of buttons and systems. But the player is also thinking in emotions. That's what the little heart symbol's for. And even more, the player is thinking in these sort of crystallized ideas, sort of epiphanies, or those ephemeral moments that are so meaningful to us in play. What we think of as a kind of jewel of gameplay. So let's go back to this diagram, and I'm going to let Matt pick it up and talk to us about how we might think about the way that games could scaffold us into making meaning, that sort of crystallized jewel of meaning, in the same way that that literature is scaffolded for us as readers.
Thank you, Tracy. So Charlotte's Web, the book, not the various movies, right? The book is structured in this very specific way. So I just want to talk about that for a second. And this comes from a very influential essay that we reference in our book quite a bit from Perry Nodelman, who is influential when we talk about understanding not just literacy, but children's literature. And he wrote an article way back in 1985 called Text as Teacher, The Beginnings of Charlotte's Web. And basically, in the beginning of Charlotte's Web, if you remember the story itself, in the book itself, the book is set for the young reader's cognitive map of what a children's story or fairy tale-like beginning would be. So there's a specific mental model that the reader might have, where there's, the story with Fern bringing the runt pig to the kitchen, and it's told from that perspective of Fern taking care of the pig. And there's some foreshadowing. There's some moments which Nodelman calls narrative gaps, which invite readers to start filling in, like the acts in the kitchen, in the room, as well as the smell of bacon. And there's like Wilbur the pig right there, right? And what those are doing is those are affordances to start, filling in not just narrative gaps, but bringing in your own personal experiences. Maybe you've been to a farm. Maybe you've had an animal under your care. But then the book shifts. In chapter 3 and forward, it's no longer that fairy tale-like setting. It's, where Wilbur is under care of with the other animals, basically, right? With Charlotte weaving different messages and so on. So that is a sort of like in a game where you would have a tutorial and then your first level and so on. The text itself is teaching the reader how to read literature, which is not just reading the story, but reading the aesthetics and responding personally to the story. So we compare that to a game called Lost Words, which was featured at Games for Change a couple of years back. And this is a game that effectively supports players in shifting from what Louise Rosenblatt called efferent play, right? Or efferent reading is what she calls it, which is when you're learning how to read, the structure of the text and so forth, to which is in a game, efferent play will be focused on outcomes and core mechanics, to close play, to be more engaged, reflective, and interpretive. So a lot like Charlotte's Web, it provides young readers with a narrative bridge from simple storytelling to literary engagement. And it's guiding players as they go. And it is written, the game itself was written by Rhianna Pratchett, who is Terry Pratchett's daughter. So, you've got a nice foundation of strong writing in there as well. On a personal note, I played this game while my mother was in hospice care. So I perhaps had a different reaction to parts of the game than other players who were not in those situations, or maybe they've experienced them differently. So that is kind of a hint of what we're talking about in this particular instance. And this game is a bit of a platformer. It's like what we can call a narrative platformer. So it plays a lot like Super Mario Brothers. Braid is another example of a narrative platformer where you are running and jumping across different objects, but those objects have different meaning based on the context of the game itself here. In the opening level, we're introduced to Izzy, who is the protagonist. And Izzy also dreams of fantasizes of this magical world in a land called Astoria. And her grandmother encourages her to write in a journal. She says, "A writer writes." That's the quote when she gets the journal. And there's two concurrent stories. One in the journal itself, which is her real world, which is mapped to stages of grief. And then there is her fantasy world, which is mapped to the hero's journey in Astoria, which is also where she is processing grief and loss.
Do you want me to jump to the video?
Yes. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, multi-continents here. So,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's all good. So what we have is a couple of videos. Now this is interesting because you're going to watch a couple of quick videos because we don't have, I don't know how many people are here, but we don't have enough game controllers. So what I'd like you to do is watch these two video clips, but think about how it makes you feel. Think about personal connections.
Okay.
Hello, Jana.
Oh,
We
could
went
that be
to see
louder?
Gran today.
You may have to restart
In the
this because of volume.
Okay.
It looks like
I don't have control over the audio, so I'm gonna hope that someone else does.
we went to see Gran today in the
No.
hospital.
No?
It
Wait.
looks
Okay.
like
Well, I'm trying to find audio, but I got no.
Brave Fortress. It took us a while to find the right room.
Here we go.
Dad let me open the door.
Yeah, it's as high as it can go.
Gran has a big, cozy bed at home. Nothing like the hospital one she was in. Lying in there, she looked so small. I don't remember her being that small. Gran's eyes were open, but she struggled to find the right words. She just couldn't. Speak properly. The doctor said it was called dysphasia. It was caused by the stroke. She's usually so talkative, but now she kept stopping. Mid-sentence, as if all the words she could find were just out of reach. I could see it really frustrating her. And then Gran started coughing. They put an oxygen mask on her. I told her she looked like Darth Gran. She smiled at that. Hello.
You said if you were to die tomorrow, your own...
Okay, sorry. I apologize. That's a technical issue on my part.
But on the plus side, they could see you now, full screen.
Hey. Sorry. Sorry, I was editing this at the last minute to try and put it into PowerPoint so we could actually have a presentation. And things are a little bit messed up. No. Sorry. Okay. Why don't you talk a minute, Matt, and I'll try to fix this.
Sure. Yeah, so that's a clip from Lost Words Beyond the Page. And actually, I co-played that with my son. So he was 11 at the time, now he's 14. So we played together on the couch, right? And we had conversations and discussions about it, as we often do when we play games. We don't just play together, but we play and have conversations about the game, and very much like you would do with educational books and television and so forth, right? But the game is interesting because, as you just saw in that clip, the game is beyond just its mechanics. There are mechanics, and the mechanics support the story, right? Such as aphasia that was demonstrated, but also it is inviting a response from players.
I think I got it fixed.
Awesome.
Okay, so this is the next. The next segment, in this segment, the story is progressing, and also you'll see a transition from the platforming in a text journal to the platforming in Izzy's adventure world that she's writing about.
Tea. I just wasn't hungry. Dad said I needed to eat. I said, if Gran wasn't going to eat, neither would I. I slammed the door really loudly and flumped onto my bed. I still had the egg sandwich. It was all mushed up. Everything is all mushed up. Dad is mean. Mum doesn't care. And Pi is stupid. Maybe I should just try to write my story. Let's see. Last time, Robin was plunging down into the dark below, but the djinn spell slowed her fall. Down and down she went, tumbling, helpless. Then and there, Robin started to cry, but the darkness didn't care. As Robin hurtled through the darkness, her helplessness no longer made her feel scared. It made her feel frustrated, angry. She wanted answers. The Jinn's magic gently released her into the unknown. Now where am I? Dad had...
So I'm not going to keep playing this because it'll take too long. But as Matt was saying while I was fixing the technical issue, obviously, you know, part of what we're feeling has to do with the mechanics of this game, the sort of jumping, the literal wordplay here, where we're turning words into actions that we can take and a kind of tone that the character can take. But more than that, it's teaching us that our emotions can be named, our emotions can be talked about, and that our emotions are related to those words and that they're related to our actions. So it's a really interesting scaffolding from, yes, we can jump and run and on these words to, these words have meaning in our imaginations, these words have meaning in our real world as well. And later on in this scene, so Robin's falling in, her character, Izzy's character, in this case is named Robin, and she's falling into this abyss of anger. Now we know that the anger is linked to her grandmother's situation. I'm not sure that the main character really knows this. She's kind of young, right? But she's still projecting that feeling of anger into the story that she's writing. And in this level, while she's dealing with that anger in her real life, she faces this huge firewoman. And the firewoman is just filled with rage and screams at her. And one of the interesting things about this is that one of the things that the character has to learn how to do is to face that firewoman, to face that fear. And once she does, that firewoman turns into a teeny tiny little flame that becomes a friend. And it's not that that rage is all bad, but that rage can drive her in safer, better ways and not consume her. So it's really fascinating. And when you look at how people online are actually discussing the game has given them permission to talk about their feelings. And so Matt already mentioned some of the feelings he had when he was playing the game at a particular moment in his life. Here are just random people online who are talking about how this game brought all those feelings back to their mind of when their own parents passed, and it made them miss their grandparents or their parents so much. And it's really actually quite beautiful that they feel that they're able to share those feelings. So now I'll pass it back to Matt to talk about some of the concepts that we talk about in the book and how games, like literature, can help us with these kinds of emotions.
Is anybody familiar with this framework, by the way? You are?
What's that?
I was asking if anybody in the room is familiar with the framework of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So this is extremely popular. This is not niche. This is very much embedded in ELA and English language arts education in schools. This is shared from the 1990s from Reading is Fundamental. It's shared on the NCTE, National Council of Teachers of English website and so forth. But this is a concept from 1990 by Dr. Rudine Sims. And it's this metaphor for the liminal boundaries of books. So she wrote this essay. It's a pretty short essay. It's online if you want to look it up. Windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And it describes when we read, we see ourselves sometimes reflected in characters and words of books and in the narratives. She wrote this, quote, "Books are sometimes windows offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. In games like Lost Words, when I played, I saw my own lived experience reflected back. Some players may see it more like a window or a sliding glass door. And this is, again, a very influential essay, particularly when we talk about why we need diverse books now more than ever, right? And we make a lot of different connections to the way we read games similarly.
So I'm going to actually do a different game, do a reading of a different game, one that is a nominee at the festival, since we wanted to do something new. So this is actually not in the book, but we wanted to show how particularly a lot of the games that are at festival like Games for Change make good opportunities for us to practice these skills, these readings of games. And so the game that I'm going to do a reading of for you today is Closer the Distance. And I can't see y'all, but have folks played Closer the Distance? Has anybody played it? Matt, has anybody played it in the room?
I have.
But I mean, has anyone else played it? Just curious.
It's in the arcade. So
Okay.
there's
Well,
that. You will
if you
play it.
haven't played it, for those in the room, I just want to say, so very succinctly to give you an idea, I would describe Closer the Distance just in a log line as kind of The Sims meets Life is Strange. You, as a player, guide the members of a community as they navigate both a very recent incident of grief and a entangled history of hope and loss. And so you begin this game playing as Connie, who's the younger sister of Angie, who literally just in the opening scenes of the game, I'm not giving anything away because it's literally in the opening scenes, died in a bicycle accident. And Connie is a very kind girl, and she really cares about everyone in her community, and she takes on her goal is to console all the other members of the community. To be honest, when I was playing, I kind of questioned this because it seemed like a really heavy objective to put on a young girl who's dealing with her own loss, for her to be running around her neighborhood with the goal of consoling every single other person. I just felt like that was a lot to put on her. But it seems like, to be honest, it seems like many of the characters in this game share a similar sense of responsibility towards each other. So there's a town doctor, Galaya. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Galaya is trying to solve everyone's issues, large and small. And so, for example, she's trying to do laundry for Angie's grieving mother, and she's trying to also find someone to help dig a grave. Angie's father is out there by himself trying to dig a grave, and so she takes it on herself to go find someone to help him dig the grave. In fact, she's so persuasive that she Galia is able to convince her own girlfriend, Lee, to go out and dig the grave with Axel, Angie's father. So here are the characters digging the grave. And just to stop for a moment, you can see on the left-hand side, as I'm switching slides, you can see that each character has their own wishes and needs. They have their own sort of states of things like sleep and hunger, and how much fun they're having, how much self-care they're doing, etc. And you can switch on the bottom right-hand side. You can switch between the characters. You can't control all of the characters, but you can switch and see the states of all the characters. Here's another scene where Galia is in the nursery, the plant nursery, and she's busy making a wreath to give to Pia, who's Angie's mother. So I have Pia selected while I've told Galia to gather flowers for this wreath. And you can see that Pia is lacking sleep. She's kind of, her self-preservation is kind of diminishing. She's just in a lot of pain right now. So that's sort of how the game works. And while I was playing it, I was taking notes. This is what it looks like when I do a reading of a game. And I've been doing readings of games for a lot of years, and I have a lot of notebooks filled with this kind of chicken scratch scrawl, where I just take notes on what's happening, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what occurs to me. And my notes in these early scenes of the game are mostly trying to understand and sympathize with the community that is grieving. And the community, as I mentioned, is really sort of entangled, and they're all trying to help each other. And to be honest, my own experience in a more sort of urban, modern world, it's so different from this entanglement that I kind of reacted to it with a bit of standoffishness. I felt, like I just didn't know what a community like that, where you would find something like that. It seemed almost, to be honest, like a commune more than a community. Like people were so up in each other's business that it just really, I felt a little standoffish towards it. But a few hours into the game, I actually sort of hooked onto a character who I did relate to. And that really got me to sort of focus in a little bit more. And so the character was Zek, and Zek was mad. He was furious. He's furious because Angie was his girlfriend and she died. And he's just, like in that last game we watched, he's experienced a sense of rage over this grief. That's how he's dealing with it, is that he's in a kind of a rage. So the thing with Zach is he's overcome with grief, but he doesn't reach out to others. So he's not really doing the same thing that everyone else in the community is doing, which, is kind of consoling each other. He's gone off on his own, and I sympathized with that. He has a strained relationship with his father, and he rejects Connie's attempts to console him. He's bottling everything up, and the only thing he seems interested in is his guitar, until I was given the chance to allow him to volunteer to carve a statue for Angie's grave. And there are a lot of people in the community who have expectations riding on this statue. So Angie's mother, who's pretty controlling, Pia, she's very controlling. She wants a statue of an angel that represents her daughter. And Zek, who knew her very well, doesn't think that would represent her. So he's kind of, struck between like, well, should I do what this controlling mother wants, or should I do what I think would best represent Angie? And, I have to tell Zek what to do, right? So I make him work like day and night on it. He's, got no sleep. He's just really letting his needs go. But I know that could maybe help him in the end. So I make him work like late into the night. And the next morning, though, I can tell that he really needs to sleep. So I let him get some sleep in the morning. And then I also know that creativity needs a rest. So I let him take his guitar down to the beach and just play some music, and it starts to be a kind of healing. And you can see that his sense of accomplishment and his sense of belonging are going up on the left-hand side. And so I was realizing that I was doing the right thing for this character. But as I was doing that, I sort of zoomed out and I realized there was another character there as well. And out on the beach was Angie's father. And I didn't realize that, but he's listening to the music that Zach is playing. And then I suddenly remembered that this is a story about connection and community. And in this instance, I moved from my rejection of that, which I had in the beginning part of the game, to a sense of understanding how community doesn't have to be cloying and close. It can be just a touch of hearing someone else play a song that helps you. So after that song, Zach goes back and I had him finish the statue. And this is sort of the poof of the what happens when he finishes the statue. And all of a sudden, I see this image of what Zach thinks Angie looks like. And it's the first time that I've seen Angie in the game. And Zach has carved her as a bald woman reading a book. And when I saw that, I was just stunned because I am a cancer survivor and I associate one thing with like a bald woman reading a book. And I was like, Angie is a cancer survivor. I just knew it in that moment. And I had no idea this was coming because Angie died in a bicycle accident. And my heart just stopped. And I realized that this is probably true, that she probably is a cancer survivor. And that was sort of, to me, it was underscored at the funeral, which is the next scene. So you can see his statue is sitting there over the grave. And they kind of tell a story that makes me think that this town was actually brought together by this family that had come there with their young daughter who had cancer. And this idea that Angie had brought the community together, the village together, made sense to me with her having survived cancer as a young person. So that's when I started realizing that the game is kind of like this tangled ball of yarn, which with each of the characters sort of, tangled up in each other's lives in different ways, and in starting to be sort of tangled up into mine in different ways. I'm going to play a clip from the funeral scene. Hopefully I've got the right clip here. And then we'll talk a little bit about how, if you're able to go play this at the festival, maybe you might find a reflection of yourself in different characters. So let me see if I can get this.
You said if you were to die tomorrow, your own burial would go something like this.
Yeah. First, Blanche would ask everyone to put together some mementos of me, like toys I played with as a girl or letters I wrote. Maybe even the pack of miracle berries Gallia slipped me whenever Mom had a sour cooking phase. All the stuff would end up in a small shrine in the chapel, or close to wherever it was that I died. Once that was out of the way, Mom would hold the eulogy.
She'd repeat over and over how you brought the village together, how your diagnosis motivated them to find a place where you could grow up safe.
And that because of this, they should all be very grateful to me, for I was the heart of this village and always would be, and yada yada.
Jasper would want to object, but bite his tongue just in time.
After all, it would be my funeral, not his. I wonder who would cry. Maybe someone would make a cynical joke. Probably Bodhi. And then they would all go home, thinking that they should never have come here in the first place. That Yesterby was all just one big mistake. Its heart had just died and been buried after all.
And then? What happens then?
I don't know. Weeks will pass, I guess. And by fall, they'll be back to their old lives.
So this is not by any stretch the end of the game, I just want to say. So there's plenty more for you to play that I haven't spoiled. Um, but I think it's a good time to look back at our original diagram about what happens when you play. So obviously, in my notes, I talked about some of the mechanics and how I was using some of the mechanics to try and make the characters feel better. And I was discovering things that I could play with in the mechanics. But I was also having emotions, and I was also having epiphanies and ideas about how this game relates to my own life. And I think that's, the kind of the core of what this this process of reading a game well really means. So one of the things we do in the book is we invite people to do what's called reflective journaling, and I'm going to pass it back to Matt on this one.
And while I'm speaking, we have a handout that you could take with you throughout the conference also. And it's on our book's website. And it's this idea of journaling, as you saw in Tracy's journal, right? This is a little bit different. In the keynote this morning, there was a talk about flow and flow theory. And we're talking about something a little different, a different way of slowing down and reflecting on our play. And this is very common in classrooms. I know it's like in my son's middle school classroom. They will read a book. They'll read The Giver, for instance. They will annotate it. They will take notes. And then they come into a literature circle and they have a conversation, a Socratic seminar about the book. Sometimes they bring in films. Sometimes I think we should bring in games, right? And we have this idea here of encouraging journaling, where we write about not just the mechanics, not just like what you see on YouTube.
Sorry.
It's okay. Like how to beat the level type of thing. But when we have this personal reflection about what it's like to be in that experience. Because a couple of weeks ago, Tracy and I, thanks to Games for Change, had a book launch webinar with Jim G. And I rewatched parts of it, actually. And one thing he noted and explained was how humans always learn from experience, whether it's in the real world, whether it's in games, whether it's in books, whether it's watching movies. And it's important, we think, to capture these experiences. So the next slide shows some different prompts that we suggest in our book. And these are reflective questions because these provide scaffolds. A blank journal to somebody new to this approach is very intimidating. So in classrooms of all age levels, we have this with books and texts. And for time, let's go to the next slide. So this is what you just have in front of you. Okay, so we could take a look at that. And one more slide because of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So clearly the Games for Change Awards will be this evening, and there's an arcade upstairs. So one more slide. All right, great. So what we'd like you to do is first, this is now your turn. I know this is billed as a workshop, but this is actually a workshop that will continue through the conference, through the festival. So as you play through the arcade, consider what's in front of you, but also we've created a website which has toolkits. So if you want to take a quick photo of the slide, selfie with us in front of it. These are toolkits, and we're going to keep adding to it. So we have a couple of things, but the player response handout you have in front of you, that's on the website itself as well. And the second, your turn, is a part two. We were also invited to edit a special issue of the Well Played Journal using our approach, the Well Read Game special issue. And there's a link there if you want to take a photo. And we just opened the call for abstracts. So not the whole thing, just a little abstract. So it's, a little less writing at first. And I think there's one more slide. Yes. There it is. So again, here's our book. Our book is published by the MIT Press, and it's available everywhere that you can get books, I think, as they say. And that's also all linked on our website. And thank you so much.